Hey crew, it is the 2nd of September and I thought I'd make a quick video about our most recent trip. I'm outside, it's the evening, it's I don't know, around 7 o'clock. There's a thunderstorm going on, it's pretty warm here. But we just returned today from what was it, probably 6 days, 5 nights trip. The goal of it was to attend the North American Festival of Whales, or Nafow, which Sarah had been invited to speak at which Sarah had been invited to speak. I'm pretty tired. So I thought I'd give a run through of the trip, kind of a blow by blow, and some of the highlights. We drove up to Pullman.
Scary cat, sure.
So what's this sheep's name?
Bella.
Vella or Bella?
Bella.
With the B?
Yes. You ready?
Do you try?
No.
Well,
Well,
try.
okay, look.
Try. Come on, Kim.
Come on.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, Bella. That's a little dramatic.
Wow. I'm dead. Wow. I'm not gonna do it. You're like a little kid, man. That's the funniest thing I've seen yet. Okay, we'll be back.
All right, have fun.
If Mary goes inside, cover the food up. He'll eat it.
Okay. Bye-bye, sheep. Pullman, saw my folks. Brad took us up to the airport in Spokane. We flew out. And our flight there, this was on Thursday we flew. And we were supposed to arrive in Pittsburgh, site of the conference, around 11 o'clock, a little after 11 o'clock at night on Thursday. And we figured that would be great. You know, we'd get plenty of sleep, get up in the next morning. Well, we flew through Denver. Actually, it was really cool flying into Denver. I'll cut in a couple of photos here. We popped out of the clouds onto the Front Range, and I looked down, and I was like, that looks like Horsetooth Reservoir. And in fact, it was. I took a couple pictures, and so when I took the pictures, I wasn't positive it was Horsetooth Reservoir, but I got pictures of what I thought was Fort Collins. And in the photographs, actually, you can see Timnath, the town where I went to elementary school. Yeah, you can see actually a couple different houses I lived in are in that picture, although obviously you can't see them exactly. But it was fun to get to see that. Unfortunately, the flight from Denver to Pittsburgh was, first of all, the plane coming in was delayed. Apparently there were thunderstorms to the east of the airport that were causing problems. So it was late getting there. We were late getting on the flight. And then the pilot said, oh, it's going to be, you know, we're loaded up with gas. I'm going to go as fast as we can, hopefully make up some time. But then we literally pushed away from the gate. It took an hour for us to actually get in the air. I literally watched an entire documentary on the in-flight entertainment thing before we took off. And so then we took off, and the flight just seemed to be going on and on. It's not supposed to be that long of a flight. And I popped up, just as we were arriving in Pittsburgh, I popped up the flight path. And basically what we did was we flew southeast out of Denver, almost all the way to the southeast corner of Colorado, where it meets like New Mexico and Kansas, and then back north from there, north and east to Pittsburgh. So we took the long stretch. we arrived in Pittsburgh. We get off the plane, go to baggage collection, and the carousel starts going. Sarah's bag comes down. Just as it basically comes off the thing, the carousel stops, and we spend 40 minutes waiting for them to repair the carousel to get the rest of the bags off. And then it's an extra 20 minutes in. Basically, it was 2:15 by the time we got into our room, and like I said, we were exhausted. Ended up sleeping in the morning. You know, the conference was amazing. The logistics were horrible. The food was bad. You know, the food in the hotel was expensive. You know, when we checked in, they said, "Oh, there's breakfast," you know, until 10 o'clock, and we didn't get up till 9 because we were so tired. And we went down for breakfast, and it ended up costing us a bomb. We thought it was included, but it wasn't, and it was incredibly expensive. So I was kind of bummed about that. Anyway, enough whining about all that stuff. The logistics sucked. But the cool thing was these were really Sarah's people. So, you know, we went to walk through there was like a vendors hall, and there are about 450 people at this conference. And so it's, you know, a small vendors hall with, I don't know, maybe 30 different people with Welsh related things. And, you know, we stopped to talk to somebody who was doing genealogy, and the person in the booth next to her came over and was like looking at Sarah and kind of peeking at her name tag. And then when we finished talking to them, she was like, "I love all your books." So it was actually kind of cool. There were a number of people there that came up to her, and so she was like a minor celebrity at this conference, which was really fun and, you know, good for her ego, I guess. Let's see. In addition, you know, like I said, everyone was so nice, and she got to speak Welsh with a few people here and there, but not as much as she was hoping. But she gave her talk twice. She gave it once on Friday afternoon and once on Saturday morning. And both times there were about 50 people there, give or take a handful. And we sold enough books so we didn't have to carry them all back, which was good. But people were really interested in the content and really super engaged. And her talk was really about the history of Wales up until the time of Llywelyn the Last and the conquest by England by Edward of Wales. And it was really fascinating because a number of people came up both to me and to her afterwards and said, you know, nobody in Wales knows this history. This is not well known. You should actually write a history book about this, a popular history book. And one woman in particular was actually, there were a couple women in particular that were pretty adamant about it. And Sarah's not that excited about it, but it was, yeah, it's kind of cool that she's synthesized this history in a way that is helpful in understanding the culture of Wales before in the conquest of the Normans, and it was meaningful to this particular group of people. So yeah, that was, her talk went really well both times. In addition, that first night, so there were some folks, I think I've told you about this last year when we went, and she gave a talk in Arvonia, Kansas, which was a Welsh settlement in the 1800s. The couple who run that, the historic village, were there. Actually, they had sponsored her, one of the people who sponsored her to give a talk. And her husband, so it's Susan and Rob, and I really like Rob. I mean, so he was there, and I got to chat with him a little bit. And then in addition, in the lead up to the banquet, there was a mixer kind of, you know, where cocktails and everything, and it was semi-formal, which neither of us realized before we went. But Sarah did bring a dress. She looked very nice. I actually had a button-down shirt and slacks, so I looked okay. So when we're in the mixer. We were just kind of working towards the drinks table to see if she could get a Coke, and there was this couple standing there, and we just kind of started talking to them, and they were old. They were older. That the husband, looked to be about 80. Turns out he was 80. His name was Edward, which he said he said, you should remember that. When we told him that we had a house in Carnarvon, he said, being from Carnarvon, you'll remember my name's Edward. Well, and so he was very jovial, very friendly. He'd been drinking a little bit, so seemed a little bit tipsy. His wife looked significantly younger. As it turned out, she wasn't that much younger than him. She was American. Edward was actually from Anglesey. And as it turns out, he's sort of a celebrity in Welsh, called minor celebrity. He's a musician, he's a poet. He has written a book, and heavily involved in Welsh nationalist politics. And his son, in fact, currently is the leader of the Welsh Nationalist Party. So we ended up having like a 40-minute conversation with them, not really knowing who they were. But then when we sat down at the banquet and we pulled out the thing, it turns out that 2 years ago he got the special award that they award at the banquet for kind of lifetime contribution to Wales and America-Welsh relations. So he was well known, and also he was doing a book signing of his autobiography, I think, that he's written during the conference. So it was cool to make contact with them, and actually Sarah really hit it off with his wife and had a couple other conversations with her. She also came to Sarah's talk and was one of the people who was super excited about the content of Sarah's talk. So it was cool meeting them. In addition, at the banquet, we got to sit with Susan and Rob. I got to sit next to Rob, and so we had a really good time. I spent I'm not sure if I should admit to this, but I spent a lot of time making fun of Sarah to them, which was actually really fun. I mean, we kind of shared the same sense of humor, so it was good. Then on Saturday we met we went to a Say Something in Wales meetup, I guess, on Friday evening as well, and so Sarah got to meet a number of people who are Welsh teachers and who had varying opinions on Say Something in Wales, but they were really interesting people and good. And we exchanged contact information. I think we're going to see some of them in Wales when we go back. They're likely to come visit us, or we'll see them at some point. It was just really good contact. I mean, and like I said, nice people with the shared interest. But the final really interesting guy that we met was a guy named a professor, or actually a historian named Wyn Thomas. And he's written 3 books kind of on Welsh history in the second half of the 20th century. So he's written a book about Tryweryn, the valley that was flooded by the Liverpool City Council to create a reservoir that displaced an entire Welsh community. He's written a book about that. He's written a book about that's a biography, an approved biography of a guy named John Jenkins, who led a bombing campaign against the British government in the 1960s, and I think it was just in the 60s, to try to spur on the drive for Welsh independence. And he gave Wyn Thomas, the historian, he gave 2 talks, one on each of those subjects, and he had done extensive interviews with the people involved in both situations. And actually he came to know John Jenkins when he was doing the Tryweryn research, and just kind of ended up having an affinity with him. And it's really interesting because he didn't, his personal opinion was that the bombing was not the right thing to do, that it was not justified, and the consequences of it didn't bear out. but at the same time, he was incredibly empathetic and was really good at communicating the perspective of Jenkins, as well as and actually with the Truerin talk, he was really good at communicating the perspective of the Liverpool people, who are kind of the villains of the story if you're Welsh, right? Anyway, Sarah and I had a great conversation, a couple good conversations with him after each of his talks, and hopefully we'll see him and his wife as well when we go back. So basically, that's the story of the conference. It was really wonderful, and the last thing, we came back, and I got to say, yesterday when we flew back in, we had to leave. We had to get up at 5 a.m. in Pittsburgh, and by the time we got into Spokane, I was just wiped out. I mean, I think I was more tired than our flight overseas. I was just exhausted, and so we drove home today after spending some time with Mom and Dad, and we're looking forward to being home for at least a little while. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.